I wasn't supposed to be there. That's what Aunt Linda whispered when I walked into the parlor. She must have snuck in. I heard her say, not even trying to hide it. I sat on the edge of the faded burgundy couch, my hands trembling on my lap. The room smelled like polished wood and secrets. The fireplace, though long cold, still radiated memories of holidays past, the ones I spent mostly in silence while everyone else laughed over wine and roast beef. This time, no one laughed. They just stared. It had been 6 years since I last saw most of them. Aunt Margaret's estate had summoned us all for the reading of her will. She had died 2 weeks ago, quietly in her garden, pruning roses in a blue silk robe. Peaceful, they said. Margaret had no children, but she was a matriarch, the unofficial backbone of the family. She owned the land, the house, the accounts, the antiques, and the unspoken power everyone assumed would pass to Linda, or James, or anyone but me. I wasn't the golden niece. I wasn't even the silver one. Why is she here? Cousin James leaned toward the lawyer. She hasn't been around, not even at the funeral. I was invited, I said, trying to make my voice firm. Linda turned to me. That must have been a clerical mistake. The lawyer, Mr. Granger, didn't even flinch. He sat with a thick folder resting on his lap, his eyes scanning the faces gathered around. When his gaze passed over mine, he paused. Briefly, but something passed. Between us, I don't think anyone else noticed. The others filled the room like royalty, waiting for coronation. Uncle Robert with his new wife, James's teenage daughters who looked bored already, Linda in her signature navy dress and pearls that clicked like teeth when she moved. I was the outsider, sitting among wolves wearing perfume. The will reading hadn't even started, but I could feel the verdict. Eyes on me like I was a joke. They didn't want to laugh at out loud. Remember the last time I saw Aunt Margaret? She called me in the middle of the night, a year before she passed. I had a dream, she said. You were standing in my garden, but everyone else was walking away. I asked her what it meant. She just said, sometimes the ones left behind are the ones who inherit the truth. I didn't know what to make of that at the time, but I remembered it now. Every word. Mr. Granger cleared his throat. If everyone is settled, I'd like to begin. The murmuring faded. Linda folded her hands like a queen, ready for her crown. James adjusted his cufflinks. Uncle Robert stifled a yawn. The lawyer opened the folder. The room held its breath. I, Margaret Eleonora Whitmore, he began, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. He continued with formalities, debts paid, accounts closed. Loyal staff compensated. Then came the distributions. To my nephew James, I leave my watch collection and the Lincoln Road property. James gave a smug nod. To my sister-in-law Linda, I leave my jewelry, including the Whitmore pearls, and the European artwork hanging in the second-floor hallway. Linda exhaled like a boxer who had just won a round. To Robert, I leave my vintage wine collection and the silver. Names were called. Things were given. Every time a new name was mentioned, heads turned, eyes sparkled, shoulders relaxed. But mine hadn't come up at all. Linda leaned closer to James and whispered, Told you she wouldn't get a thing. Heard it. And apparently, so did Mr. Granger. He paused, looked up. His eyes landed on me again. Then he closed the will. Slowly, the room shifted. I need everyone's full attention. He said, his voice wasn't loud, but it was final. Everyone went silent. I need everyone's full attention. Mr. Granger repeated, his voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. He placed the thick folder on the polished oak table in front of him, adjusted his glasses, and pulled out a single sheet of cream-colored paper from the back. It was handwritten with a familiar slant. This is an addendum, he said. Written and signed by Margaret Eleonora Whitmore on February 16th of last year. Witnessed by 2 legal representatives. It was filed separately under her instructions. Whispers started, but he raised a hand. In this addendum, he continued, She names a different beneficiary for the Whitmore estate, the bank accounts, the farmland, and the family trust. James leaned forward. Linda narrowed her eyes. Mr. Granger's eyes moved to me. The sole heir to the remainder of Margaret Whitmore's estate is her niece, you, Miss Whitmore. The room exploded. You can't be serious. This is a joke. Far thing. She hasn't been around in years. James stood, knocking his chair over. Linda's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Her hands clutched the pearls at her throat like they were choking her, but I just sat there stunned, frozen. I didn't know how to breathe. Mr. Granger waited for the noise to subside, then calmly placed the document in front of him, tapping it twice. Miss Whitmore was very clear in her wishes. She stated, and I quote, "The house I built, the land I loved, and the savings I protected shall go to the one who never asked me for anything but time." Silence.complete.devastating.Linda found her voice first. This is a setup. There. Must be a mistake. We'll contest it. Granger didn't flinch. You're welcome to do so, but the will is legally sound. Her signature is verified. Her mental capacity was evaluated. The document has been sealed until today. There is no error. James muttered, "This is insanity." Then louder, "She's not even family." I turned to him slowly. "I'm your cousin, James. You've disappeared, no? I was pushed out." Linda stood up abruptly, grabbing her purse. "Well, enjoy the ghosts. That house is falling apart anyway." But I wasn't thinking about the house, or the land, or the money. I was thinking about that night on the phone with Aunt Margaret. Her voice in the dark. Her dreams. Her loneliness. Her fierce, quiet love for the one person who hadn't tried to carve up her legacy before her body was cold. Mr. Granger stood too. "I'll be in touch about the transfer documents, Miss Whitmore. There is one more item for you. A letter. She asked me to deliver personally." He handed me an envelope. It's my name written in blue ink. I didn't open it yet. I couldn't. My fingers trembled. The others filtered out, some muttering, some silent. No one looked me in the eye. I stayed seated, alone now in the room that had once been too full of people pretending to care. I looked around at the portraits on the wall. Margaret's eyes, even in oil paint, seemed to be watching. I opened the letter. "My darling, I imagine by now the room is empty. That's how it always is. People show up for the reading, not the living. You came back. That's all I ever wanted. You were the only one who visited without a request in your hands. You brought books, tea, stories. You sat on the porch while I dozed off. You called me in the winters. You remembered me when I was still alive. The rest wanted what I had. You wanted me, so everything I have is yours now. Use it. Grow something. Restore what matters. Forgive when you can. Leave when you must. But never let anyone make you small again. And promise me this. Plant roses on the southern wall. Do you know the spot? Love, Aunt Margaret." I folded the letter slowly, pressed it to my chest. I had no idea what I would do next, but I knew one thing. This time I wouldn't disappear. Didn't leave the house that night. Everyone else did. James peeled away in his BMW. Linda slammed her car door so hard the window cracked. Even Uncle Robert gave me a sheepish glance before muttering, "Nothing personal." And disappearing, I stayed. The estate was silent for the first time in decades. Just the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. And the low creak of wood settling. It was mine now. The thought hit me in waves. Mine, the dusty chandeliers, the creaky staircase, the fields beyond the fence line, the little sunroom where Margaret used to read Agatha Christie novels and pretend not to nap. All of it. I wandered the halls in socks, each step echoing in the memory-soaked silence. The kitchen still smelled faintly of lavender oil. There were teacups on the drying rack. A note on the fridge, written in Aunt Margaret's curling script. "Remind Maria, prune hydrangeas, Tuesday." Maria had been the gardener for years. Another quiet ally in a loud family. I found her number on a magnet. I texted her one sentence, "I'm staying. I'll take care of them." She replied instantly. She hoped you would. The next morning, I made tea in Margaret's chipped white kettle, sat at the old oak table, and opened a notebook. I started a list. 1. Repair the southern wall. 2. Plant roses. 3. Find out what's actually in the family. Trust. 4. Call the lawyer. 5. Don't disappear again. Each line felt like a rebellion for years. I had watched that family dominate every space with voices, with money, with entitlement. Now I was the one with the keys. That week, they tried everything. Monday, a call from James. "Let's be reasonable. You can't possibly manage that estate alone. Maybe we can work something out." Tuesday, a letter from Linda's lawyer threatening to contest the will. Wednesday, cousin I hadn't spoken to in 10 years sent a just checking in message. On Facebook. By Thursday, I had a voicemail from Robert's wife. "Linda is telling everyone you manipulated Aunt Margaret. That you used her mental state." I deleted it before it finished, but Friday brought something different. Mr. Granger came back. He arrived with a briefcase, a subtle smile, and a stack of documents. "I'm here to walk you through this structure of the trust," he said. "And the additional account Margaret opened 2 months before her passing." Blinked. Additional account. Kay nodded. She called it Legacy Reserve. Kay didn't tell anyone, but she deposited exactly $4.2 million into it, earmarked for charitable and educational initiatives. My mouth went dry. She wanted me to give it away. She wanted you to decide, not them. That night, I sat on the porch Margaret loved, staring out at the southern wall. The spot was bare now, just cracked stone and overgrown weeds. But I could picture it already. Roses, deep red. Just like the ones she used to cut and leave in a vase by the piano. The whispers kept coming. Neighbors, old family friends. She gave it all to her. She never even showed up at the funeral. I heard she wasn't even blood. But I didn't fight them. I just kept planting. On Sunday, Maria arrived with gloves and a trowel. She hugged me without words and handed me a small black pot with a rose sapling in it. "Margaret started this before she passed," she said. She asked me to give it to you if you ever came back. I didn't cry. Not then. I waited until I was alone with the soil, and as I pressed that tiny root into the earth, I whispered, "I'm here now." They didn't stay away for long. 2 weeks after the will reading, they returned. Not all at once, but in coordinated waves. James came first. He showed up in a tailored blazer and sunglasses, pretending it was a friendly visit. "I was just passing through," he said, stepping into the foyer uninvited. "Thought I'd see how you're holding up." I didn't offer tea. He walked through the house like it was still his, touched the antique piano, commented on the state of the windows. "Look," he finally said, sitting at the edge of Margaret's old chair. "I know things got heated. But this place, it's a lot for one person. You're a writer or something, right? Not exactly a landowner?" I said nothing. He smiled. "Maybe we talk partnership. I manage the land. You keep the house. We split the rest." I just looked at him. "James," I said softly, "do you know what Margaret left me?" He smirked. "Everything." "No," I said, "responsibility." He didn't understand. That was fine. He wasn't supposed to. Linda came next. She didn't knock. She showed up in the middle of a meeting I was having with the new contractor, a young woman from the nearby college, who specialized in restoring historical homes. Linda stood in the middle of the hall and said, "I need a word." The contractor looked at me. I nodded, and she stepped outside. Linda waited until the door closed. "I don't care about the money," she began, which was how I knew this was very much about the money. "I cared for Margaret when no one else did. I drove her to appointments. I managed the accounts. I helped with the staff. She may have signed that will, but she wouldn't have done it in her right mind. Are you planning to contest it? She hesitated. Then I don't want. To destroy you, I want to give you an option. Sell me the trust. Sell me the property. I'll pay generously. You walk away clean. I smiled. Not cruelly, just finally. No. She blinked. No, I'm not walking away. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, I said. I'm restoring what you all tried to ruin. A week later, the legal threat came. A formal notice contesting the validity of the addendum to the will. It was signed by Linda, supported by James, and backed by a firm notorious for these types of disputes. I forwarded it to Mr. Granger. He called me an hour later, laughing. They're going to lose, he said. But if you want, we can go public. The documents are clear. The signatures legal. Her statements explicit. I thought for a long time before answering. Let's go public. 3 days later, the story ran in the local paper. Whitmore heir honors family legacy and defends. It featured a photo of me in the garden, kneeling by the new rose beds, with the southern wall behind me, restored, gleaming. Alive. The article quoted Margaret's letter. It detailed the trust. It mentioned the legal challenge and the evidence that would almost certainly crush it. Within hours, my inbox was full, not with threats, but with support. Former staff members, friends of Margaret, former students she had mentored. People I'd never met. She told me about you. She always said you were the only one who listened. She said you saw her. Linda's lawyer quietly withdrew the petition the following week. James never came back. But I wasn't done yet with Mr. Granger's help. I restructured the legacy reserve. I established a scholarship fund in Margaret's name for women over 40 returning to college. I set up a grant for young artists in the county. I've opened the gardens for public tours on Sundays, complete with tea and readings of Margaret's favorite books. And I hired local workers, not contractors from the city, but people who knew the soil, the stone, the history. A year later, the estate was flourishing. The house had been repainted. The windows restored. The southern wall covered in roses sometimes. People still ask, didn't your family resent you for taking everything? I always answer the same way. I didn't take anything. I received something, and I protected it. The anniversary of Margaret's passing came quietly. No grand events, no memorial speeches, just a soft morning breeze. A bouquet of red roses by the garden wall, the smell of early rain on stone. I hosted a small brunch at the estate, not for the family, but for the people who had been there. Maria, Mr. Granger, 3 young scholarship recipients, and a woman named Denise, a nurse, who used to sneak Margaret her favorite ginger cookies at the clinic. They sat around the long wooden table that once held stiff formal dinners and bitter silences. Now it held plates of honey scones, hand-pressed orange juice, and quiet laughter. Someone asked, did Margaret know what would happen after she passed? I nodded slowly. She didn't just leave a will. She left instructions on how to survive. As we stood near the southern wall, Maria turned to me and said, she would have loved this. I smiled. She does. That night, I lit the old lantern on the porch and sat outside as dusk settled over the fields. I thought I was alone, but then a black car pulled into the gravel driveway. Linda stepped out, wearing all gray. No pearls this time. She walked slowly toward the porch. I didn't move. She reached the first step and stopped. I saw the article last week, she said, about the grant. I nodded. She looked tired, not defeated, but changed. I didn't come to fight, she said. Why did you come? To apologize, she said, almost choking on the word. I waited. I thought I deserved everything because I stayed, because I did the logistics, but I never saw her. Not like you did. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then I gestured toward the chair beside me. She sat. We watched the light shift across the fields. I still don't think she should have given you everything, Linda said eventually, without venom. Just honesty. That's okay, I replied. She didn't give it to me for you to understand. She gave it to me because she knew I wouldn't waste it. Linda looked down at her hands. Then, quietly, you didn't. We sat in silence until the lantern went out. Weeks later, I was invited to speak at the local university. Topic: Legacy Preservation. And quiet power. I almost declined, but then I remembered Margaret's words, never let anyone make you small again. So I stood on a stage I never thought I'd stand on in front of students, donors, writers, historians, people who had once looked past me. I told them about a woman who left roses instead of bitterness, a house that became a haven, and how the moment I was ignored at the reading of the will was the moment I stopped waiting for permission to matter. After the applause faded, a young woman came up to me, tears in her eyes. I was disinherited last year, she said. I thought I had no power. You don't need inheritance, I told her. You need roots and courage to grow something new. She smiled and left with a scholarship brochure in her hand. That night, back at the estate, I sat by the window and wrote the final line in Margaret's notebook. Everything they tried to take from me became the reason. I stayed standing. The wind moved through the roses like a whisper. And for the first time in years, the house felt completely at peace.